The room was never meant to hold this many people. It was a narrow training hall tucked behind a row of closed storefronts, the kind of place you only found if someone brought you there. Concrete floor, exposed beams, one flickering fluorescent light buzzing overhead like it was fighting to stay awake. The air was thick with sweat, dust, and the faint metallic scent of old iron plates stacked along the wall. No banners, no trophies, no posters of champions, just space. Bruce Lee stood near the center of the room, barefoot, his black training pants darkened at the knees from hours of movement. He wasn't performing, not stretching, not shadowboxing. He stood the way a man stands when he is finished explaining himself. Still, around him the crowd formed an uneven half-circle, students, fighters, curious onlookers who had heard rumors but didn't quite believe them. Whispers moved through the room like static. Some had come to learn, some had come to test. A few had come hoping to see something break. Bruce felt the shift before anyone announced it. The door at the back creaked open, and the temperature in the room changed, not physically but emotionally. Conversations faltered. Someone stopped mid-laugh. A pair of students exchanged glances and instinctively stepped back. The man who entered did not hurry. He didn't need to. He was thick through the shoulders, built low and compact, with the kind of density that came from street work, not gyms. His knuckles were scarred, not the neat calluses of a disciplined fighter, but uneven, split skin that told stories without names. His forearms were roped with old muscle, and his eyes scanned the room the way a predator surveys unfamiliar ground, not looking for threats but for weaknesses. This was not a man with titles. This was a man with a reputation. They called him a street fighter, but that word didn't quite fit. Street fighters didn't last long. This man had lasted. Alley confrontations, backroom disputes, fights that started with words and ended with ambulances. He didn't train for rules, he trained for endings. He stopped just inside the doorway, let the silence stretch. Bruce didn't turn, the man smirked. "So this is him," he said finally, his voice rough, unpolished. "The movie guy." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd and died quickly. Bruce turned slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. His expression was neutral, unreadable. Not cold, not friendly, simply present. The fighter stepped forward, boots heavy against concrete. He looked Bruce up and down, openly dismissive. "You teach people to fight like that?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at Bruce's relaxed posture. "No guard, no stance, no fear." Bruce said nothing. That unsettled him more than any insult could have. The fighter rolled his shoulders, pacing a loose circle. "I've ended fights in parking lots faster than your students can bow," he continued. "No gloves, no mats, no mercy." He stopped directly in front of Bruce, close enough that the space between them tightened, charged with something unspoken. "I don't care about forms," he said. "I don't care about philosophy. Out there," he pointed toward the street. "There are no second chances. Someone swings, someone drops, that's it." Bruce's eyes never left him, still calm, still quiet. "You teach them lies," the fighter said. "Pretty ones, but lies." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. This wasn't banter anymore. This was a challenge being carved into the air. Bruce tilted his head slightly, studying the man the way one might study a current before stepping into a river. "Do you always speak this much?" Bruce asked softly. "Before you act?" The words were not sharp. They didn't need to be. The crowd inhaled as one. The fighter laughed, but it came out brittle. "I'm just making sure you understand something before this gets ugly." He leaned in. "I will destroy you." No shouting, no theatrics, just certainty. For the first time since he'd entered, the fighter stopped moving. He was waiting for something: anger, fear, resistance, anything to justify what he already believed. Bruce did not give it to him. Instead, he took one slow step forward, not aggressive, not defensive, intentional. "You're used to chaos," Bruce said, his voice low enough that people had to lean in to hear. "You mistake it for power." The fighter's jaw tightened. "I mistake nothing," he snapped. "I've put men twice your size on the ground." Bruce nodded once, acknowledging the statement without challenging it. "And yet," he said, "you're still searching." The fighter's eyes flickered. "What does that mean?" "It means," Bruce replied, "that if what you knew was enough, you wouldn't be here." The room went silent. That was the moment, not the fight, not the fall. The moment when the street fighter realized he wasn't being challenged physically, but psychologically. That the man in front of him wasn't impressed by violence, wasn't threatened by reputation, and wasn't playing the role he was supposed to play. The fighter exhaled sharply, anger rising to fill the uncertainty. "Enough talk," he said. "No rules, no excuses." He glanced at the crowd. "Everyone here can watch." Someone hesitated, then pushed a heavy bag aside. Another dragged a bench back toward the wall. The open space in the center of the room widened, rough concrete exposed like a scar. Bruce stepped into it without ceremony. He didn't raise his hands, didn't square his shoulders, didn't prepare in any way the crowd could recognize. He simply stood, balanced, rooted, a still point in a room full of tension. The fighter cracked his neck and took his place opposite him. His breathing quickened, adrenaline flooding his system. This was familiar territory for him, the edge before violence where instincts took over and thought disappeared. He smiled. "Last chance to walk away," he said. Bruce met his gaze. "I'm already here." The fluorescent light hummed overhead. No bell rang, no signal was given, but everyone in the room felt it. The storm had arrived, and it was no longer avoidable. No one told them to begin. The space had already decided. The crowd pressed back against the walls, instinctively creating distance, not out of courtesy but self-preservation. Even those who had come expecting entertainment now understood this was something else. There would be no demonstration, no lesson. Whatever happened in the next few moments would be real, irreversible. The street fighter rolled his shoulders and shook out his arms, loose and violent, like a man warming up before tearing something apart. He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, testing the floor, letting his body remember 1,000 uncontrolled encounters. His eyes never left Bruce. Bruce didn't move. His weight was evenly distributed, heels barely kissing the ground. His arms hung relaxed at his sides, hands open, fingers loose. He wasn't bracing, he wasn't preparing, he was waiting. That was the first thing that unnerved the fighter. "Come on," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Do something." Bruce remained still. The fighter advanced a half step, then another, cutting the distance with the casual confidence of someone who had closed gaps before. He feinted with his shoulders, a crude imitation of misdirection, testing for flinches. There were none. Bruce's gaze stayed soft, unfocused, not locked on the fighter's hands or his face, but somehow on everything at once. The fighter felt it then, not fear, awareness, and awareness made him angry. He surged forward without warning. The first strike was ugly and fast, a looping right hand thrown with the full intention of ending things immediately. No setup, no concern for balance, just force and momentum crashing forward. The crowd gasped. Bruce moved, not back, not away, sideways. It was a small shift, almost invisible, a slight turn of the hips, a fractional adjustment of the lead foot. The punch passed where his head had been a moment before, cutting through empty air. The fighter didn't slow. He followed with a left, then another, swinging with the fury of a man who had never needed precision to win. Fists came in erratic arcs, shoulders twisting violently, breath sharp and ragged. None of the punches landed. Bruce wasn't blocking them in the way people expected. There were no hard collisions, no dramatic deflections. He simply wasn't there when the strikes arrived. He stepped inside one punch, outside the next, his movements economical, efficient, like he was conserving energy for something else. The fighter growled in frustration and lunged again, this time lower, aiming for the body. A brutal hook designed to crush ribs and drive the air from the lungs. Bruce intercepted it, not with force, with timing. His hand came up and closed around the fighter's wrist at the exact moment the punch fully extended. The moment of maximum commitment. Maximum vulnerability. The grip wasn't crushing. It didn't need to be. The fighter felt his arm stop mid-motion as if it had struck something solid and unyielding. He tried to pull back. It didn't move. For a fraction of a second, they were connected. The room froze. Bruce stepped in close, so close the fighter could see his own reflection in Bruce's eyes. Calm, focused, unmoved. "You're open," Bruce said quietly, his free hand lifted, 2 fingers extended. They stopped less than an inch from the fighter's throat, close enough that the fighter felt the air shift, close enough that his body understood what his mind had not yet caught up to. Death measured and controlled. Bruce released the wrist and stepped back. The crowd exhaled. The fighter staggered, more shaken than hurt, his confidence cracking under the realization of how exposed he had just been. His face flushed red, humiliation and rage twisting together. "That was luck," he spat. "You got lucky." Bruce tilted his head slightly. "Try again." The invitation was calm, almost polite. That was the last thing holding the fighter back. He charged. This time there was no technique at all, no feints, no setup, just raw aggression pouring forward in a desperate, all-in attack. A wild overhand right followed by a lunging left, his weight completely committed, his balance sacrificed for power. Bruce moved like water. He dipped under the overhand, the punch sailing harmlessly over his shoulder. As the left came in, he stepped inside it, closing the distance until the punch no longer had room to generate force. They were chest to chest now. For a heartbeat, the fighter thought he had him. Then the ground disappeared. No one saw the exact mechanism. Later, people would argue about it. A sweep, a turn of the hips, a redirection of momentum. What mattered was the result. The fighter's feet left the floor. His body rotated, horizontal for a brief, impossible moment before slamming into the concrete with a heavy, hollow thud that echoed through the room. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He lay there, gasping, staring up at the flickering light, his mind struggling to understand how he had gone from attacker to helpless in the space of a breath. Bruce stood over him, not looming, not threatening, just there. Exactly where he had been standing all along. The silence was complete. Someone near the back whispered, "Did he even hit him?" The fighter tried to rise. His body refused, not from injury, but from shock. His internal map of reality had been torn apart, and his muscles hadn't caught up yet. He propped himself on one elbow, chest heaving. You didn't even strike me," he said, disbelief thick in his voice. "No," Bruce replied. "I didn't need to." The words settled over the room like dust. The fighter looked down at his hands, the same hands that had ended fights without thought, now trembling slightly. He flexed his fingers as if checking whether they still belonged to him. "How long?" someone asked quietly. Bruce glanced at the space between where the first punch had been thrown and where the fighter now lay. 6 seconds, he said, 6 seconds. That was all it had taken to dismantle a lifetime of certainty. The fighter laughed once, short and hollow. He dropped his head back to the floor, staring at the ceiling. "I promised I'd destroy you," he murmured. Bruce offered him a hand. "You destroyed your assumptions," Bruce said. "That's harder to survive." The fighter stared at the extended hand. For a long moment he didn't take it, then slowly he did. When Bruce pulled him to his feet, the difference was unmistakable. The aggression was gone. The swagger dissolved. What remained was something far more dangerous and far more rare: curiosity. The room buzzed with it, because everyone there understood the same thing. They hadn't just witnessed a fight. They had witnessed a man's understanding of violence collapse in real time, and Bruce Lee was about to explain why. The room didn't erupt the way people expect after violence. There was no cheering, no shouting, no rush forward. Instead, there was a quiet that felt heavier than the impact itself. The street fighter stood unsteadily now, his weight shifting as if the floor beneath him could no longer be trusted. His breathing slowed, but his eyes remained wide, scanning Bruce with a mixture of disbelief and something dangerously close to respect. He had been thrown, but more than that, he had been interrupted. Not physically, mentally. "I didn't see it," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "I moved first, I know I did." Bruce nodded once. "Yes." "So how," the fighter pressed, "were you already there?" Bruce did not answer immediately. He studied the man in front of him the same way he had studied his movement earlier, without judgment, without emotion. The pause stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. "Because," Bruce said at last, "you were loud before you were fast." The fighter frowned. "I don't mean with words," Bruce continued. "I mean with intention. You decided to attack before you moved. Your body simply followed the decision." The crowd leaned in. "You committed," Bruce said. "That commitment announced you." The fighter ran a hand over his face, frustration mixing with realization. "I've ended fights with that commitment." "Yes," Bruce replied, "against people who were waiting to be hit." That landed harder than the fall. The fighter looked down at the floor, replaying the moments in his head, the missed punches, the grip on his wrist, the sudden absence of ground. "I was faster," he said, more to himself than to Bruce. Unga, you were, Bruce agreed. In one direction, the fighter looked up sharply. One direction, forward, Bruce said. Always forward. A murmur rippled through the room. You train to overwhelm, Bruce continued. To impose force until resistance collapses. That works when resistance is rigid. But when it yields, when it redirects, force becomes a liability. The fighter flexed his wrist again, as if feeling the echo of that impossible stillness. You didn't block me, he said. You didn't fight me. Bruce gave the faintest smile. I let you fight yourself. That was when it broke, not the fighter's body, his identity. I've been fighting like this my whole life, the man said quietly. No rules, no structure, just survival. Bruce nodded. And survival taught you habits. What's wrong with habits? The fighter asked. Nothing, Bruce said. Until the situation changes, he gestured to the room. You expected chaos, you expected fear, you expected resistance. When none of those appeared, you had no reference point. The fighter exhaled slowly. I didn't know what to do. Exactly. The crowd shifted, the tension transforming into fascination. This was no longer confrontation, it was a dissection. Most people believe fighting is about techniques, Bruce continued. They collect moves the way others collect stories, but techniques are answers, and answers are useless if you don't understand the question. The fighter crossed his arms, listening now fully. You asked the wrong question, Bruce said. You asked how to destroy me, you never asked who you were facing. The fighter swallowed. I saw a man, he said, smaller than me. Bruce shook his head gently. You saw a shape, not a mind. The words settled deep. I train people to see before they act, Bruce went on, to feel intention before it becomes motion, to respond before thought interferes. That's impossible, someone near the wall muttered. Bruce turned toward the voice. It's unavoidable, he said. Your body already does it. You pull your hand from fire before your mind understands pain. You blink before debris reaches your eye. Perception always comes first. We simply learn to ignore it. The street fighter nodded slowly. I was thinking about the damage I'd do, not about what was happening. Yes, Bruce said. You were fighting the future. I was dealing with the present. Silence followed. Then the fighter asked the question that had been forming since he hit the ground. Could I have beaten you? Bruce didn't hesitate. Yes, the room stiffened. If, Bruce continued, you had been empty. Empty, the fighter repeated. Without expectation, Bruce said. Without anger, without the need to win, the fighter laughed bitterly. Then I wouldn't be me. Bruce met his eyes. Exactly. The implication cut deep. The fighter looked around the room at the faces watching him, no longer judging, no longer afraid, just curious. All my fights, he said slowly, were about proving something. Bruce nodded. To yourself. And you, the fighter asked. What were you proving? Bruce considered the question. Nothing, he said. I was listening. The crowd absorbed that. I don't teach people how to fight, Bruce continued. I teach them how not to be trapped by their own habits. Styles, rules, identities, these are useful until they become prisons. He walked slowly across the room, his movements unhurried. Boxing, he said, has rules. Wrestling has rules. Street fighting pretends it doesn't, but it has patterns all the same. Aggression, speed, overcommitment, the illusion of unpredictability. The fighter nodded grimly. I thought chaos made me dangerous. It does, Bruce said, until someone learns to read it. The fighter looked down, then back up. What do you call what you do? Bruce stopped walking. I don't, he said. That drew murmurs. Names create boundaries, Bruce explained. Boundaries create blind spots. The moment you say, this is what I am, you close yourself off from what you could become. The fighter stared at him, absorbing every word. So what do you teach? He asked. Bruce looked around the room one final time. I teach awareness, he said. Adaptation. The ability to remain calm when someone else is desperate for chaos. He met the fighter's gaze. I teach people how to be dangerous without being enslaved by violence. The room breathed again. The fighter extended his hand, not as a challenge, but as a request. Teach me, he said. Bruce studied him. Teaching, Bruce knew, was more dangerous than fighting. A fight ends. Teaching reshapes lives. Training begins with unlearning, Bruce said. You will feel weak before you become capable. You will lose before you understand winning. The fighter nodded. I've already lost. Bruce took his hand. Come tomorrow, he said, before sunrise. The grip was different this time, equal. As the crowd slowly dispersed, conversations resumed in hushed tones. People didn't speak about the throw, they spoke about the stillness, the absence of effort, the way violence had been neutralized without spectacle. Bruce remained behind as the room emptied. He stood where the fighter had fallen, looking down at the scuffed concrete. 6 seconds. That was all anyone would remember, but Bruce knew better. Those 6 seconds were built on years of questioning, years of doubt, of tearing apart what others accepted as truth. Strength was never the answer. Awareness was. He gathered his things and stepped outside into the cooling night. The city moved on, unaware that something had shifted in a small room behind closed doors. Bruce Lee walked into the darkness, unfinished, uncelebrated, already preparing for the next question the world would ask him. And somewhere behind him, a man who had built his life on destruction was lying awake, realizing that the most dangerous thing he had ever encountered was not a fist, but clarity. If this story changed how you think about strength, control, or power, make sure you subscribe. These aren't just stories about Bruce Lee. They're lessons about awareness, discipline, and mastering yourself before confronting others. More legendary moments are coming.